And indeed, we are also very interested to hear your views on Gaza. So if we have time at the end, we would like to ask you a few questions about that as well.
Sure.
So I think what I'll do is I'll begin by asking Sir John if he wants to take up the first questions. Would that be all right? Yeah. No, I don't think it's best if you do.
Mr. Lapid, thank you very much. We understand that Israel has agreed to a ceasefire with Iran. Can you say whether or not you think Israel has achieved its ambitions as a result of the conflict already, or is there still a risk to Israel as long as the Iranian regime remains in place?
Well, first of all, we have to make sure the ceasefire lasts, because just, 45 minutes ago, which is 3.5 hours after the ceasefire took place, 2 Iranian missiles hit the Israeli north. So we have to figure out whether it's just a breach or a bleach, or is it something they're going to do, and then we cannot stand for it. Basically, the answer to your question is no, because this is a ceasefire, it's not an agreement. We know we have heard significant targets of the nuclear sites inside Iran. We know the American attack on Friday night was very effective on Fordow and on Natanz and Isfahan. We are still gathering the intelligence on the enriched uranium Iran already had before this 12 days war. Since we knew to begin with that they have collected around enough material, enough enriched uranium, high-level enriched uranium, enough for about something in between 9 and 12 bombs. So some of it was smuggled, we don't know how much. And of course, we hit the ballistic missile program. They were going into manufacturing abilities that would have allowed them to have more ballistic missiles than Russia in less than 2 years. So we have hit all this, and it's a good thing, and the world is a safer place than it was 12 days ago, but still, we have to keep an eye on the intelligence. And the next thing that needs to happen is to have a very solid agreement. And in this, of course, the UK is going to play a role.
There were reports prior to the American strike of nuclear material being moved out from those sites. Are you concerned that Iran may still have nuclear material and be in a position to continue its program despite the strikes that have taken place?
Yes. Again, we're still assessing, but basically, it's a bit complicated. There are only a limited number of places they can smuggle the uranium to. It's not something, you don't take it in a suitcase and put it at home until the fire stops. So since we hit all the major facilities, we think at least the majority of it might be gone, but not everything. And we know that they're going to do their best in order to restore the ability and gather the material, because this is what they do. Part of the problem, part of the fact that we were forced into this operation is because this regime, like always, is lying and deceiving and cheating and doing everything in its power to hide it from the world. This is why in any future agreement, the level of supervision is going to be critical.
Thank you, Mr. Lapid. I'm interested in your view, based on the intelligence that you've seen, on time-wise how close Israel believes Iran was to having nuclear capability prior to the strikes by Israel and the US, and what your assessment is of how far that has been pushed out as a result of the attacks, or do you believe that it has been completely extinguished?
Well, everybody's throwing numbers on the tables, but it's not years, and it's not, and even if it's months, then not very few of them. And part of the intelligence we were seeing and sharing with the Americans, of course, and some of it with your intelligence as well, is the fact that Iran has revived its weapon group that was out of the game since the beginning of the 2000s. And this was done with the direct order of the supreme leader, of Khamenei. So not only that they were enriching uranium, not only that they have developed the next generation of centrifuges, they were also reviving the weapon group and all the capabilities involved. So they were running for a bomb. Now, I don't think Israel can afford, and the world can afford, even Iran as a threshold country. But this was more than a threshold country. This is running, and we felt and thought and saw intelligence that told us that we can wake up one morning with a first experiment of a nuclear weapon in the Iranian desert, and this would have thrown the entire Middle East into a nuclear arms race, because, you know, if the Iranians have one, then the Egyptians want one, the Turks want one, the Emirates might revive parts of their nuclear program that they already have, and of course the Saudis want one. So we felt that the danger is closing down on us and everyone else in the region, and therefore we were forced into action.
And to the second part of my question, as a result of the strikes, what is your view on where Iran's capability is now in terms of timeline?
Well, we don't know yet. It will take some time to assess all the damage, and this assessment will have to penetrate through all the future lying and deceiving of the Iranians, and we're going to share information and intelligence with our allies and friends in the United Kingdom included. So it's going to take some time to assess. But they were hurt, and they were taken backwards significantly. We just don't know exactly right now how much. I give you an example. The Americans were using the MOP, the huge bomb they have in Fordow. This is a bomb that penetrates the surface and then explodes 20 or 30 meters inside the facility. So it takes time. You don't get to assess what happened from satellites. You have to figure out other ways to assess what happened there, and it will take some time until we will know for sure. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure, but it will take some time until we will know better.
I'm interested in your opinion, because obviously you can destroy facilities, you can set back their plans, but ultimately Iran still has the technical know-how, the scientists, the manufacturing ability to rebuild these, the enrichment process over,
and the uranium mines.
And the uranium mines over some period of time, should they wish to. So in terms of what the desired outcome is, in your opinion, for Israel, is it that, is it enough to give up nuclear ambitions, or does Iran have to give up any desire for a civilian nuclear capability? What gives Israel confidence? Because Iran will continue to be a regional neighbor.
Yeah, well, I would go, there are 5 basic terms that needs to be answered in any future agreement. I'm not against all agreements. I mean, we always said a good agreement is the best thing, a bad agreement is the worst thing, and what has happened now is the in-between, or the sanctions were the in-between. So there are 5 basic terms that needs to be answered in any future agreement. The first is no enrichment inside Iran, which is the gold standard of the Middle East that was set when the Emirates wanted to have their own nuclear plant. No centrifuges, they all have to be dismantled. No enriched uranium, all enriched uranium inside that they already have has to be taken somewhere else, as deposited somewhere else. No ballistic missiles program, and of course, unlimited supervision. If you have those 5 terms, that makes sense, and to some extent, the majority of those were already answered in the JCPOA, in the former agreement that the UK was part of as an E3 country. just performed better and in a more strict way, then you have an agreement that we can trust, and there will be no future necessary Israeli operations or American operations or joint operations. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to fight. Listen, this is sometimes the absurdity of this is hitting me. We have no border with Iran. We have no historical conflict with Iran. The Iranians are sympathetically mentioned in the Bible as our friends. So historically, and you know, in the Middle East, there are only 4 real historic nations that were not a Sykes-Picot, Western geographers drawing a map, which is Israel, Iran, Turkey, and Egypt. So there's no reason for this ongoing dispute. And alas, this regime has decided that all he wants is to develop a nuclear program in order to have a bomb, in order to throw it on Israel. So we had to act.
Thank you. You mentioned the JCPOA, Mr. Lapid. Thank you for saying that. Of course, in 2018, when the last Trump administration pulled out of that agreement, it was understood that was because of Israeli pressure. I wondered, did you think that was the right decision at that time? And do you agree that we do now need a negotiated situation close to the JCPOA again now, in order to make sure that Iran isn't able to covertly develop this capability again?
Well, in my opening, it wasn't even an opening remark, it was an opening remark. I said that I disagree with Prime Minister Netanyahu in most things. One of them was the way they acted opposite the JCPOA. Getting rid of the JCPOA without a clear plan of what do we want to have instead of this was wrong. And by the way, without getting our European friends, this was, back in history, I don't know if you remember this, but England used to be part of Europe. But basically, doing this without our European friends was a mistake. It should have been a coordinated effort and not one-sided. So I think the JCPOA had its flaws. I used to discuss this with our American friends in length, but it was but making it disappear without a coherent plan of what should come instead of this, just saying we're going to have full sanctions, but the full sanctions does not include our European friends, so it's not full sanctions, wasn't the right way to go about it. So what we do need is an agreement that is better than the JCPOA, stricter, better supervision, tougher terms.
Thank you, very, very helpful. Another criticism that has been made in the international community is around international law, the initial strikes made by Israel in this round of conflict. Many people have said that, when we've spoken, Iran may have been months or years away from developing a nuclear bomb, so that there is no clear international legal precedent for the attacks. What is your position on that, and do you think it's damaging for Israel to be seen again after so many occasions to be breaching international law?
Well, what's the committee's position on an atomic bomb exploding in Israel in terms of the international
This would, of course, be a disaster.
Yes. So yeah, it's always a conflict whether or not to raise holocaustic arguments in discussions like this. We didn't speculate, we didn't feel, we saw the intelligence that tells us that Iran is rushing into the bomb, and the international law cannot do anything about it, or it doesn't have the willpower to do something about it, the international community. And we thought we cannot sit on our hands. Now, we are a law-abiding country, but the right for self-defense is part of the international law, especially opposite existential threats. So this is why we have operated the way we did. Let me remind you, if you're talking about the international law, there are only two countries, two member states in the United Nations, in which one is openly saying that its goal is the total destruction of the other. The Iranians has said it again and again on public platforms. We are the
Israeli ministers who have said similar things about the population in Gaza and Tehran. I mean, if we're just picking out individual statements.
Okay, hang on. And let's not go into that rabbit hole at this moment. Can I perhaps approach it from another way? Let me see if I can put it this way. So we've heard your evidence that that Israel was under threat, and certainly the bellicose language used by Iran was something that we put to the ambassador. The fact that they had nuclear material that seemed to be much purer than 3.6% without any kind of explanation for it also is very threatening to Israel. We appreciate all of that, but the evidence that the threat was an imminent one is something which is, I think, an important point. And although it's something that the Israelis have said, and sometimes the Americans have said, some Americans have said, and some Americans have said many things, within a few days. What we haven't had is we haven't had any evidence. And I wondered why, if the Israelis believed that they were under imminent threat, why it was that they didn't produce that evidence before the international community. Don't you regret not putting that evidence before us all so that we can understand why it was an imminent threat as opposed to a threat that may happen within a few months or a few years? And as my colleague has said, if it's a question of the threat a few months or years ahead, we will get back to that position again unless we have negotiations.
It's a fair question. If you are, while you're presenting to the world the factual imminent threat, usually it's too late. But on top of this, and of course, you're always limited by the fact that you don't want to surrender your intelligence sources. Now, the entire international community is a bit post-traumatic from the United States going to war against Iraq based on information that is flawed. This is not the case.
How do we know that?
What?
I'm so sorry. How do we know that you're not going to war on the basis of flawed evidence? We haven't seen anything at all, flawed or not.
You saw you saw Fordow, you saw Natanz, you saw Isfahan, we've shown the Americans, of course, large with the cooperation or sharing of information was quite extensive. And I'm going back to the beginning of our conversation. I am no fan of Israel's government, and I'm going to have, I don't know, if easy time discussing with you about Gaza, but easier time than the government, because I completely disagree with what they're doing there.
We will get on to that.
On this one, at one point or another, you will have to decide who you trust. So I'm telling you, if you want to know who you trust, Israel or Iran, on this, you should trust Israel.
Let me see if I can approach it this way. Because we talk about trust, and obviously I think we seem to all be agreeing that in order for there to be a long-lasting peace in the Middle East, we need to have a negotiated settlement. It needs to be negotiated, there needs to be a clear agreement with the Iranians, what they can do and what they can't do, and it needs to make sure that it's enforced and enforced clearly. And exactly what comes out of the negotiations is obviously subject to negotiation. But in order for there to be trust, in order for there to be a proper negotiation, there needs to be trust on both sides. And the Iranian ambassador, and I think I should put this to you, essentially said, we agreed to JCPOA, and the Americans walked away from it, egged on by the Israelis, he believes. And then we are in a second lot of negotiations, and in the middle of those negotiations, the Israelis start bombing us when we're going into those negotiations in good faith. And then, I mean, he wasn't here to say this, but I imagine he would now say, and then the Americans say nothing's going to happen for 2 weeks, and within a few days, the Americans are bombing us. So in those circumstances, one could understand that there would be quite a lot of work needing to be done to get the Iranians to be able to trust the Americans and the Israelis if there are to be negotiations. Do you accept that?
I will go, I have a problem with the premise, if I may. The Iranians are lying, and the Iranians are doing this using a language and a vocabulary that the Western world is fond of. They are talking about international law while oppressing the young and the women and the LGBT community. They're talking about democracy when they are not a democracy. They're talking about the two sides of this equation, while there are no two sides of an equation. This is a regime we have no problem with that says they want to kill all the Jews because they're Jews, because this is the deep, radical version, twisted version of Islam. I don't think this is Islam. I mean, Islam is something different, but they have twisted Islam into this radical version. But they know that when they're talking into the oldest parliament in the world, they need to say things about their rights and our duty to recognize their side of the story.
Okay.
I don't accept this premise.
Okay. May I take you back to Edward? And then I think Uma's here, so Uma may have some questions for you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lapid. I'm interested in just following on a little bit from the Chair's point and going back to the 5 things that you outlined in terms of what Israel is looking for Iran to agree to. And I'm sort of struck by the fact that having just been bombed by 2 nuclear powers, giving up your nuclear ambitions, wouldn't seem to incentivize the Iranian regime to give up its nuclear ambitions. So I just wonder whether or not you think that it is possible to reach an agreed peace with Iran based on the 5 principles that you outlined, or does there need to be regime change in Iran for Israel to be able to achieve those 5 things?
Well, I have nothing against the idea of a regime change in Iran, but this is for the Iranian people to decide. And I think they are taking into consideration in these past 12 days the fact that they've just realized that billions and billions of dollars were taken from the schools, hospitals, roads, and housing into a nuclear program that disappeared within a week and a half. This is not, so this is for the Iranian people, a calculation for the Iranian people to make. In terms of the agreement, yes, I think they're going to be forced into this agreement. And I think if we were still trying to play nice and discuss with them what is it they are willing to give, opposite what we are willing to give, what is it that they are willing to do, opposite what kind of pressure the Americans are willing to force, this would have gone nowhere forever as it did before. This is a regime that needs to understand the consequences when they decline the necessary supervision or the necessary terms of a future agreement. Otherwise, they will never do it. I don't want to say things like, you know, they understand only the language of power because things are always more complicated than this, but we're not far from it.
Thank you. Abdesam.
Thank you, Mr. Lapid. I'd like to refer you back to an interview that you gave last year where you said Netanyahu is not working for the country. The only thing he cares about is staying in power. He's for himself. He's lost his soul. Is the endless sort of fight for wars and constant wanting to keep the extended war in Gaza continuous? Is this just an existential fight for survival for Netanyahu?
Well, this is, I feel a bit uncomfortable to discuss this with a foreign, even if friendly parliament. Just on a personal note, I am so tired of analyzing his psychological motives. This has become an international game like they do with President Trump. Basically, When something is doing is the right thing to do, as he did in Iran, then it's the right thing to do. When something is wrong, like in Gaza, then it's the wrong thing to do. And I can give you an endless list of reasons why is it that I think he's the wrong person to lead the country. But I think you'll understand if I rather do it in Hebrew to the Israeli voters.
Just in relation to the current conflict in Gaza, what do you think should happen to bring the war to an end?
Are we there yet?
I think we're probably there yet. I think we only have 15 minutes, so we've done half an hour in Iran, so let's go on to Gaza.
Okay. Number one, as I said numerous times, including twice this morning, what we need to do is go to an agreement in Gaza, end the war, and bring back the hostages. Because this is going nowhere. That raises the question, what needs to be done in Gaza? The plan I presented to the American administrations, I've discussed this with your foreign minister and others, is I think what needs to be done is to let the Egyptians run Gaza for the next 15 years. I will explain. Because this is not an instinctive solution, and it is not a flawless solution. It is just the best solution out of many bad ideas. Right now, the problem we have is we have no one to give Gaza to. Everybody understands why is it that Israel is saying Hamas cannot stay. The Palestinian Authority is too weak and incompetent. We thought in the beginning that some sort of a coalition of Arab countries, Sunni, moderate Muslim countries, like the Saudis, the Emirates, and others, will be the right coalition to run Gaza. But right now, it doesn't seem possible, opposite other things that are going on in the region that I'm not sure we're going to have time to discuss. Egypt has run Gaza for 19 years, between 48 and 67. They know how to fight terror. They know how to fight Muslim Brotherhood, or again, it's a radical, twisted version of Islam. It's not Islam. They know how to cooperate with us. We have fought together against ISIS, and they can function as guardians for the Palestinian people. I'm not saying we're giving Gaza to the Egyptians to become Egyptian. But what I'm saying is they can have a symbolic branch of the Palestinian Authority into the civic side of this. But basically, the only body around us that can run Gaza is Egypt. And this should answer another problem we are preoccupied with, is the fact that Egypt is in trouble after, 5 years of COVID, then war. Egypt's two main sources of income, which is the Suez Canal and the tourism, are hurt significantly. The external debt is about $155 billion. They are growing 1.7% a year, and therefore they cannot feed the mouses that are born there every year. So we think this can be arranged in a way that the international community will help the Egyptians with their internal problems, while Egypt is helping the international community and the Palestinians by taking Gaza to be managed for a limited period of time. This is the solution I've offered. I'm still discussing this with others. Now, ridiculously enough, I've discussed it with the Americans, with the European Union, with you a little bit, even with the Egyptians. The only body I didn't discuss it with is our own beloved government, for reasons of mutual dislike.
And under what conditions would Palestinians themselves be, in your view, able to run Gaza or the West Bank?
When you just have to clarify for me, when you're saying Palestinians, which Palestinians? Because there's the Palestinian Authority, there's Hamas, there's Islamic Jihad, there's so many bodies who are calling themselves the real representatives of the Palestinians.
Let me rephrase the question. Under what conditions would you see the recognition of a Palestinian state where the Palestinian Authority would be the ruling body? Under what conditions would you see this?
Well, you know, it's tragic. When I was prime minister, I gave a speech in the United Nations General Assembly, which is the biggest stage on earth, and against the advice of every person in his right mind, I've declared the fact that I am a supporter of the two-state solution. But tragically, this is has been postponed significantly after October 7th, because fear has become such a factor of any way we're looking at it, making sure, I mean, in order to discuss the two-state solution, the Palestinians have to prove to us now that this doesn't become another failing terror state that will be the base of the next attack against the Israeli people, against the innocent, the women and children that were attacked on October 7th. So fear, suspicion, and human tragedy, unfortunately, I think has pushed back the idea of the two-state solution. We need not to give hope on the future possibility of peace between our peoples, because this is the right thing. Two major things happened to me in the last year. One is this war, and the other is I have my first granddaughter, and I wish for her that in her future there is peace between those two people, two agonizing, suffering peoples.
Thank you, Chair.
Very good. Blair.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Lapid. I think it's a matter of regret for us that the Israeli government haven't been willing to talk to us, so we thank you for coming before us. Can I go back to something you said a moment ago about it's for the Israeli voters to decide. Unfortunately, I think people in Gaza can't wait that long. You this morning called again for the end to the war in Gaza. You've called for that many times. You've offered Netanyahu political cover for that. You've urged him to distance himself from extremists like Smotrich and Ben Gvir. What needs to change before any election and change of leadership for Netanyahu to answer that call to end things in Gaza, to do a deal, to bring home the hostages and to stop the killing?
Well, the reason I've said it again this morning is because I said, well, he didn't want to do it while he was still trying to regain his political power after the tragedy of October 7th, that his name is written all over it. Now that he's on top after a very successful operation in Iran, he might change he might understand or relate to the idea that this is the right thing for the country. And you know what? It is also something that will be extremely popular to the people of Israel. So as you do in the opposition, you have the right idea and you push it, trying to make sure that in the moment it will become relevant, you'll be out there with the right call. So this is what we were trying to do. I think we have a better chance today for an agreement in Gaza, which of course has to start with returning our hostages, than we had 12 days ago before the operation in Iran. I will discuss this, of course, with the Prime Minister and with the coalition in the future, not weeks, but days.
And to go back to your original premise, I represent a very large Jewish community, and many of them have been obviously deeply traumatized by the pogrom on October 7th, but also deeply shocked by everything that's followed as well, and they worry deeply that Israel's international reputation has been deeply damaged by what's happened, not just in Gaza, but what's happening in the West Bank as well with settler violence. If you were Prime Minister tomorrow, what would change? What would change in terms of humanitarian access in Gaza, in terms of challenging the violence in the West Bank?
First of all, if I may use the example that is in front of me, one of the things I would have changed is being, you've said that the government refused to talk to you, and you thank me for being here. If I was the Prime Minister, I would have talked to you, and the government would have talked to you. The Israeli government was way too busy in victimizing themselves instead of explaining to the world what is it that we do and what kind of enemy are we facing and what are the circumstances that leads to the tragedy in Gaza. And I tell you something more. They have neglected their duty, not only as a government, but also as human beings. And you've mentioned the Jewish congregation in your area. This is also has to do with Jewish morals, to say we are sorry for the loss of life in Gaza. We are sorry for every child that has died in Gaza. Children should not die in grown-ups' wars. And we're going to do our best in order to prevent this. And when it doesn't succeed, because we are fighting a horrible enemy in a very dense populated area, that is using his own children as human shield. But when it happens, we are so sorry about this, and our heart goes out for them, and we have to make sure we find ways to be helpful to them. And the reasons that our government has neglected their duty to say so is cynical and political in ways that I find hard to not only to relate to, but to forgive. You see, I tried not to attack my own government in the British Parliament, and couldn't do it because this is so emotional for us all. So this is one. And two, I would finalize a deal in Gaza a year ago. There's no reason on earth this is going on for 620 some days. Not to mention the fact that we are an island economy based on high tech, with an army that is based on the model of reserves, and therefore long wars is a very bad idea for Israel, even strategically, not only morally.
Uma.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lapid. I don't know if you'll recall, but we had a chance meeting in Hostage Square where we were visiting earlier this year. And you said that it was good to see that Israelis have friends who are coming there to see the pain and the suffering. And there's a lot of us around this table who've been asking the difficult questions for nearly a year now of how we get to a resolution to this bitter and painful war where there has been a lot of loss on both sides. Yesterday, I met with the wife of a hostage whose body has not yet been returned to her. And she said her son is struggling to process the fact that his father is dead. She's had it confirmed, but she said without a body, without a funeral, how can they move forward? She was pregnant when he was kidnapped, but she's now since given birth. She was pleading with me to do everything I can and everything we can on the Foreign Affairs Committee to use our voices to call on the Israeli government to do everything they can to bring the hostages home and the bodies as well. And we know that's a sticking point for ceasefire negotiations, for things moving forward. Why is it, in your view, that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government haven't put further pressure on bringing the hostages and the bodies home?
I don't know. I've been asking myself this question every morning and every night when I go to sleep, and then every morning again. Why is it that they don't understand that there will be no healing process in Israel before the hostages are back? There will be no healing process in the region before then there will be an agreement to end the war in Gaza, and the only thing that will happen is that we will live again October 7th on daily basis. This is, you know, my sister is a professor of psychology, and she works in the hostage headquarters. She, in my family, like in Jewish families, they send the bright ones to study and the stupid ones to work. So I went to work and she went to study, and she's telling me we don't even scratch the psychological effect on the people of Israel of the fact that our children are still there and the war is still going on. So why is it that our government is not willing to take the extra effort and finish this is beyond my comprehension.
Thank you. The view is really clear from when we were there, even though for a short time. A lot of the Israeli people, the general public, are quite tired of the situation and they do want this to end. A lot of them have real sympathy for the plight of the people in Gaza, including some of the hostage families that we met who were worried about the women, the mothers in Gaza, and they've seen them struggling without food, without aid, without medical supplies. So there is a feeling in the Israeli public that this has gone on for too long. But the members of the Knesset that we met when we were there were unwilling to even see that point of view, and they were solidified in their mindset. How is the Israeli leadership, the politicians of the day, going to meet where their public are? Because there's no point with the general public protesting or speaking up if those in power aren't shifting anything. How do they get to a different point in this stage?
Well, you since you missed your bus, you missed the part when I was saying.
Didn't miss her bus. Her bus was slow.
The train.
So the thing is, so you missed the part that I said I'm not going to defend the government. And again, it's beyond my comprehension. Why is it they do not understand? And you know what? Why is it when talking to lawmakers from other countries, they don't show sympathy? Why is it that they don't feel it? This is the worst interpretation of Jewish morality. This is the worst interpretation of what is your duty as leadership. And I'm not going to spend my time or yours defending something I deeply believe is hazardous to the soul of my country. This is not what this country is all about. I mean, this is not why my father came here from the Holocaust to build a nation, and this is not why people fight wars, not to become a heartless country. We are a country with a heart in a difficult situation, surrounded by bitter but terrible enemies, fighting the worst kind of terror on a daily basis. But this doesn't justify becoming like them. This only comes to emphasize the necessity and the duty to be different. And not everybody in our government remembered this.
Can I ask you a question about your plan? Just because I think probably we ought to, for the sake of completeness, just put this aspect as well. I mean, the Egyptians don't agree with it, do they? Which is a big problem.
Well, it depends. You know, when I was in Washington discussing this, I said to them, you have to understand, because we know the Egyptians pretty well. The first thing they're going to say is no, and then they're going to discuss it. This is, I mean, we've been working with them. I mean, one of the, you know what, it's an encouraging thought that wars come and go in the Middle East, but if you're looking at this, agreements survive. We have a peace agreement with the Egyptians for 50 years now, and with the Jordanians for almost 40. And the Abraham Accords that everybody thought were really, really fragile has lasted the last 2 years of what happened in Gaza. So the agreements we are signing seem to be more solid than the fighting that came before them. And I think we know how to close a deal, especially if it takes into consideration the internal problems that preoccupies Egypt and the Egyptian leadership. And besides, and people needs to remember, as and I reminded the Egyptians that the reconstruction and rebuilding, rehabilitating of Gaza is going to be the second largest economical project in the Middle East after the rebuilding, reconstruction, and rehabilitating of Syria. So it's big business. It's the right thing to do. It's bringing them back to the position they always had, which is the most important Arabic country. It has so many advantages to Egypt that I believe we can find a way. And you know what? It doesn't even contradict. And this on this, the Egyptians agree with me. It doesn't contradict the plan that the Egyptians themselves has presented in the Arab League last 2 Arab League meetings, because it's going to be some sort of an interim stage towards the plan they have presented.
What you mean is the plan that the rest of the world believes is the way forward, which is 2 states.
The rest of the Arab world.
Yeah, but they also want 2 states.
Well, as I said, we don't want to. Listen, there was a funny. It was funny to me. I don't know if you're going to find it funny. Before the conference in Saudi Arabia, when President Trump went to Riyadh and everybody was invited but us, and somebody asked me about this, and I said, this is weird. This is because the only thing the Saudis wanted was that Netanyahu will say something about the possibility of somewhere down the road in the far future, if all Palestinians will converted to Judaism and become blonde, then we will agree to a 2-state solution. And he refused. And I've said on Israeli television that this was the very first time ever that everybody was asking Benjamin Netanyahu to lie, and he refused. So, yes, eventually I want peace with the Palestinians. And this shouldn't be off the table ever, because this is what I want for my children. And not being able even to say it out loud is just not only ridiculous but also cowardly. This is not going to happen in the near future, but we have to have a future. And there's, on top of this, of course, the necessity not to take steps in the West Bank that will make things irreversible.
Yes.
Hopefully, or naturally, we're going to wait for the next government in order to do so.
Thank you very much. Well, your staff are sending messages to mine to say that we ought to wrap up, but I'm going to ask just one more question for Uma.
Just behind the camera I'm looking at, there are 5 people who's doing this all the time.
Whereas I have people behind the camera saying, keep speaking, we want to hear more of what you have to say. But Uma, you can ask the last question.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Lapid, for your evidence today. You said that you wish for peace between the 2 people, as do we all, and I think so too do the rest of the world. To get there, we do need to see this 2-state solution. You know, it has been kicked down the road for quite a long time. The situation in Gaza is perilous. The hostage families are crying out for an end to this. The people of Israel have suffered for a long time, and the Gazans are suffering daily. How do we get to the 2-state solution if the Knesset are not willing to say this out loud or have this conversation?
Well, first of all, not all the Knesset, as you just heard. I think part of what is, it's interesting, there was a huge discussion here about Churchill, because Netanyahu's followers said all the time, you see, he's the new Churchill, now he fought Iran. He was the one who said, when he was walking alone in the dark, saying Iran is the biggest threat, now the entire world understands, as Churchill did before World War II. And then some of us said, after the war, Churchill has lost the war, the election. And you know why? Because Attlee, he was very less impressive, had a plan for the future of England. We have a good plan for the future of Israel. And I don't know how much you follow Israeli domestic politics. I know, Uma, Parliament member, I know you do more than others. In every poll in the last 2 years, they're going to lose this coalition. They're going to lose because they have no plan for the future of Israel. They're just selling fears all around. the world is in the midst of an international struggle between populists and alarmists and people who are just making sense and trying to build better future. And the only principle in politics that works is the pendulum principle. And the pendulum now is moving our way. So I'm optimistic about the possibility of a Knesset with a majority of people who are saying, yes, we want to have a better future for our children, and this better future includes peace with our neighbors.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will put your staff out of their misery and allow you to go. But thank you very much for your time today. We really do appreciate it. If there's anything that occurs to you that you think that perhaps you would also like to put before us, then please do write to us after this session. And again, thank you again.